Yeah.
It's just very frustrating.
Well, look at the English language over the last decade and think of the words we now use that are nonsensical, but are in everyday use. You know, there's every day I hear, well, not every day, but quite often you'll hear words, you go, where the devil did that come from? You know, where did this word, what does it mean? Like twerking, right? Who ever heard of the word twerking before it became a thing? I'm trying to think of something that tweeting, different words, although tweeting might have been around, they were usually talking about birds, not about communication amongst humans. There's all kinds of different examples like that didn't exist and were made up on the spot, maybe to fill a need or because somebody wanted to feel clever and didn't want to go through the more lengthy process of describing what they're doing using the regular vernacular. So, I mean, what are you doing? Well, I'm tweeting. What do you mean you're tweeting? What the heck is a tweet? Well, that's when you use your phone and you punch in some letters and you send a message off. So you're messaging. I'm tweeting.
Well,
because people are inherently lazy.
I used to have this debate with my kids when they would say I'm talking to somebody online. Before we had video conferencing that was so now become quite ubiquitous, and you can do FaceTime or video conferencing on your cell phone now. But they used to sit at their computer and they were messaging back and forth when messaging was all the craze, even before they were tweeting and texting on cell phones. And they'd say, well, I'm talking to my friend. And I'd say to them, no, you're typing to your friend. You are not talking to your friend. You don't talk
That's right.
through the typewriter. You talk verbalizing it face-to-face or on the telephone or whatever. So, but here's a word that's come into quite wide use that I still have had some trouble understanding its origin and the connection to what it apparently means. And that's the term woke, W-O-K-E. Okay, I've heard people say, well, you have to be woke, which I understand.
Yeah, where the heck did that come from?
I don't know where it comes from, but I understand that it has to do with being very modern, progressive, very in tune with, the sort of the new age way of looking at things.
What, socially conscious?
Socially and environmentally. Well, I don't like the term you just used there, Nick. I would say not socially or environmentally conscious, but I would say socially and environmentally unconscious. Although they would say that they're being conscientious, I would say no, you're not, because if you were, you wouldn't be destroying.
Okay, yeah, that works.
You would not be destroying the environment with the solar panels. I mean, do you understand? Acres and acres of solar panels, Nick, in order to get unreliable energy, and people go, "Well, this is renewable; it's a great thing." And, here we go again, the law of unintended consequences, right? So you go, okay, we're not going to burn fossil fuels. Right. Instead, we're going to have this solar farm in order to power, this small community. And you have hundreds of acres worth of solar panels that are going to have to be disposed of in another 10 or 15 or maybe 20 years. So tell me, what do you do with the toxic waste that is going into making these solar panels? Okay, quite apart from the energy that you use and the toxicity of the process of manufacturing solar panels. Okay, tell me what you do with the solar panels once they're no longer effective and you have to dispose of them. You don't simply recycle these things. And so it's, again, that's why I say, you're not environmentally conscious. You're environmentally unconscious because you're not being conscientious at all about the ramifications of the policies that you're putting in place. It's really quite, and this again is a corruption of the language. It's more than just.
Well, I think that.
I was just going to say, Nick, it's more than simply saying that you're using language that is not accurate and that you're wrong in the way you've assessed it. But more and more, people buy into the big lie because they accept the language around it as opposed to the actual fact that the language is supposed to be describing. And it's a perfect example of Orwellian. Talk about H.G. Wells, or George Orwell, wrote 1984, right? Which, by the way, in case anyone hasn't made yet the connection, was 26 years ago. So, I mean, I don't know how important that is, but I just, find it ironic that 1984 was 26 years ago.
He was just wrong by 26 years, that's all.
Yeah, so it's really quite awful. Anyway, I think I don't know if I'm really accurately describing the word woke, because it sort of defies description a little bit, I think, but that's kind of, I think what the idea is when we talk about being woke.
Well, that's another phrase that's been worked into the average lexicon of the day, and I think that the idea of being unconscious applies not only socially in our social interactions, but certainly politically. How could anyone vote for someone like this present government if they were conscious? It's just out of this world, considering the amount of scandals, the amount of lies, the amount of... take it as an example, this idea that the government is going to compensate you because you're out of work. Well, we're out of work because the government forced us out of work. And all that money they're using to compensate us with, while they do have an obligation to compensate you when they force you out of work because they're the roadblock, therefore they should pay, it's with your neighbor's money that they're paying. And that, nobody ever stops to think about. When they get that government check or they get that direct deposit and they think, oh, good, I can pay the bills this week, they forget that what's going on is it's coming out of their neighbor's pocket. Or they choose not to think about it. It's because the government has no money of its own. It only has the money we send in taxes and what they borrow against in the future, which is just taxes that have not been collected yet. So you're asking your neighbors to fund your lifestyle. And far too many people are far too comfortable with that or have never really given it any thought. And that's a good example of being unconscious.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at life, because I was just thinking that it's people hallucinating through life. It's people sleepwalking through life, and that really, I think, is probably the best definition of woke that I've heard, and that is that woke means the people that have not yet awoken. They're just sleepwalking through life, and. I'm not.
Isn't that awakened?
Or awoken. They have not woken up yet. They have not. I think the word is they have not woken up, or they have not awakened. And I think it works both ways.
Or awakened.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it works both ways, Nick.
I think you're.
I'm on to something.
Yeah. It's just more. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. And like the bloodhound you are, you should chase it down.
I would like to chase it down, Nick, but unfortunately we don't really have the time to do that. So I will tonight anyway. I just want to make sure that people understand that when it comes to Joseph Ben-Ami, and I think that I could speak for Nick Vandergraat when I say this, we are not woke. So, ladies and gentlemen,
No.
We appreciate you.
We are a lot of things, but woke isn't one of them.
Woke is not one of them. Ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate your loyalty. Thank you for joining us this week and every week on the Nick and Joe Show Live, and your loyalty in listening to us on our podcast as well, which you can catch on ThinkRadio.ca at any time. And if you haven't listened to any of our past podcasts, you should take the time to do it. Oh, and by the way, while I'm at it, if you haven't listened to the latest podcast from the Exploratory Journeys with Tom Harris, please do, because he has some very interesting discussions on the true state of polar bears in northern Canada. So you don't want to miss that. You can check that out on ThinkRadio.ca as well. The podcast is there. So, Nick, that's pretty much all I have to say, so I'll just turn it over to you.
All right, with that said, Joseph and I will see you all again right here next week. In the meantime, ubicaritas et amor, Deus sibi est. Good evening, God bless. Don't let anything disturb your peace, and may you have a fair wind and a following sea.